Hello bookworms, I'm Becca. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 books I would reread and 1 book I would not. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a very big rereader, but there are some books that I own that I would not mind revisiting, whether it be for the plot or the characters or just the overall atmosphere of the book and the way it made me feel. There are some stories that I could just revisit again and again. The first 3 probably won't be too surprising, but the last 2 are ones that are a bit out of the norm for me. The one that I would not reread might be a little bit surprising. So let's jump right in. The first one on my list for books that I would reread is one that I talk about all the time, so it should not be surprising to anyone at this point, but I'm going to talk about it again, and it is The Merciless by Danielle Vega. If y'all are new here, buckle up, because I probably mention this series in 90% of my videos. I love this book so much. I have actually reread this one a few times in the past. This is a young adult horror book that is kind of like Mean Girls meets The Exorcist. It's about a new girl who moves into a new town and a new school. She makes friends with the popular girls at school. They invite her to a sleepover. She finds out that they have ulterior motives. They are convinced that this goth girl at school is actually possessed by the devil, and they're intending to do an exorcism on her. So things get a little unhinged as the book goes on. It is wild, but I love this cover. The hardcover edition of this book is beautiful because it's bound like an old style book where the cover is just embossed right into the front of the book. I love it. It feels like old leather. It's amazing. The back says, "Forgive us, Father, for we have sinned." Nothing more, nothing less. And then, of course, we have the nice pentagram on the cover, which kind of just sets the scene. I like this book because it was one of the first young adult horror books that I've seen, and I'm a huge horror fan. I love scary movies. I love horror video games. So finding young adult scary books that actually spooked me a little bit was very difficult. And this one I had to put down a few times because it deals with some topics that I just cannot handle. So this one is at the top of my list. Highly recommend. Spooky season is coming up. I don't care what anyone says. It's not too early. It's never too early for spooky season. Home Goods has spooky things up right now. It's time to pull your Halloween decorations out of the closet, and while you're at it, you might as well pick up a copy of The Merciless. The next one on my list also should not come as a surprise to anyone. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becca Albertalli. I have reread this one several times as well. I love the movie so freaking much. Makes me cry every time. I used to talk about this book way more because when I first read it, it was one of the first queer stories that I read, especially in young adult, so I didn't have much else to go off of. Now I've expanded my collection quite a bit, but Simon will always be my go-to comfort story. People have different opinions about it, but I love it. I don't know, there's just something about the story that gives me the warm fuzzies. It's one of my favorite ones to reread. Book number 3 is actually my favorite book of all time, and like I keep saying, should not come as a surprise. It is How to Make Friends with the Dark by Kathleen Glasgow. This book is tabbed to high heavens for good reason. It's an absolutely beautiful book. It's a wonderful depiction of grief. It's about this teenage girl who suddenly loses her mom, who is the only parent that she has, and is thrown into the foster care system at 16 years old. And has to navigate everything that comes along with that because her journey of being in the foster care system is not the same as a lot of the other kids that she meets along the way. She is dealing with the grief of losing her mother and her best friend, dealing with having her whole world turned upside down, It is a very emotional book. This book is not to be taken lightly. If you have grieved anyone or are currently grieving someone, be gentle with yourself if you choose to pick this one up. Tabbed for a reason. This story unfortunately hit very close to home for me, and this is one of the few books that I actually have never reviewed. It is my favorite book of all time. Have never reviewed it because of how emotional it was for me to read. And even though it was such a heavy book, I love Kathleen Glasgow's writing with all my heart, and this one just, it had to be on my list of rereads. Out of her 3 books, I think this one is the one that I would be most likely to reread. For the next one, we're taking a hard left turn and going into YA fantasy. What? We love to see it. It is Fable by Adrienne Young. I freaking loved this book so much. I originally got it because of the cover. It is stunning, and when you put this cover and the sequel side by side, it makes up a whole face, which I just adored with every fiber of my being. The back says, "The salty sea and the promise of something hidden in its depths had me reading this book at a furious pace. You don't simply read Fable, you are ensnared by it." I could not agree more. It is about pirates. It is about this girl named Fable who is sailing the seas, looting, and just trying to forge her own path. And she's on a mission to find her father. It is so good. I almost don't want to say much more than that. In the beginning, I was saying how sometimes I reread a book because of the plot or the characters. This one, I would 100% reread for the atmosphere of the book. It is just everything. Like, you can feel yourself in this world. You can smell it. It's so incredible. Adrienne Young has an amazing way with words, and I just cannot talk about this book enough. I loved it so much. If you are not a huge fantasy reader, but you are open to fantasy, I highly recommend Fable. And the last book that I would reread is one that I read years ago, and I used to own the whole trilogy, but I don't anymore, and I had to buy another copy of the first book because I just loved it so freaking much. It is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This one also very different than the other books on my list. It is an adult fantasy, kind of, about this woman named Diana Bishop, who is a scholar and descendant of witches, and she somehow gets her hands on this old manuscript that holds the origin stories for all of these supernatural beings, vampires, witches, and demons. When she unearths it, suddenly all of these people are out to get her and out to get that book. It is so good. Very dark academia vibes. It was so much better than I could have ever imagined it to be. And this is not the kind of book that I read ever. So the fact that I was so enthralled by it says a lot. It's also a AMC original series now. I just love this book so much. And speaking of rereading, I'm actually going to be doing a reread of A Discovery of Witches in my Discord as the book club pick for July. So starting this Saturday, July 9th until August 9th, we are going to be rereading or reading for the first time A Discovery of Witches in the Discord, discussing it. I'm going to be doing a discussion stream once we finish it in August, and then we are going to be watching the show. So if you would like to get involved in that, we would love to have you jump in, and the link to join the Discord is down below in the description. So those are 5 books that I would reread, and now it's time for one that I am not going to be rereading. This is one that I read recently, and I've talked about kind of at length. It is The Project by Courtney Summers. I loved Sadie by Courtney Summers. I talk about that book all the time. If anyone asks for audiobook recommendations, it's always Sadie. If anyone is looking for a book or something to get them into reading, Sadie. I got you. It's always Sadie. I don't care. Forget all of the books that I talked about before. Forget all of the books that I have. If you are looking for a book, and more specifically, an audiobook, Sadie by Courtney Summers will not disappoint you. The Project, on the other hand, a big no from me. This one had so much promise, and I just wanted to see it pushed more. In The Project, we follow we follow 2 girls. One named Lo, the other B. They are sisters. Mostly we are following Lo, and then in flashbacks we are seeing B. Lo, in the present days, is trying to find her sister who joined this project cult called the Unity Project. And she is a writer, a journalist, so she is trying to pull her ties to somehow be able to write an expose on the Unity Project in hopes that it will grant her access to be able to find her sister. She finds out very quickly that this is going to be more difficult than she thought. You would think that it's going to be so good, even just with that. But we really do not even get to see the inner workings of the Unity Project. Like, I wanted to see it get more and more unhinged as we discover more of the dark secrets, because on the surface, it seems like this amazing group that helps out a lot with food insecurity and homelessness, but we find out that it is not everything that Lev Warren is making it out. Like I said, I really just wanted more from this book. I just wanted more. I don't really even know what else to say. I just wanted more. I feel like Sadie was so gritty and so dark, and this one was very surface level. Even the characters, we don't get a whole lot of information on the characters. I didn't feel a very big sense of connection with the characters in this book. And there would be things happening with the side characters that were deeply impacting Lo, and I just didn't understand why, because I was not connected to these side characters. I didn't understand why these things that were happening were such a big deal. So, not the biggest fan of The Project. Will not be revisiting this one. Probably will end up unhauling it. It just was not my fave. If you have a choice, choose Sadie, not The Project. So there you go. Those are 5 books I would reread and one that I would not. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already to see more videos. That's all I got for you today, and I will see you next time. Bye!